I'd like to call this regular council meeting to order. Before we proceed further, Councillor McDermott, would you provide us with the land acknowledgement, please?
Thank you, Worship. We begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land upon which we are gathered is traditional territory of the Adirondack, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe people. We are the beneficiaries of ancient agreements such as the dish with one spoon between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, who agreed to share the abundance of land through peace, friendship, and mutual respect. The two-row wampum by which the Haudenosaunee welcomed the settlers and agreed to share the land in mutual respect. And the Treaty of Niagara, considered a fundamental document by First Nations in all future relations and treaties with the British. We recognize that we have a responsibility to be stewards of the land in cooperation and collaboration with the Indigenous people, not only for one generation, but for all generations to come. We understand that we have an obligation to learn the lessons of our history, educate ourselves about the experiences of the Indigenous people, and seek opportunities to heal the wounds that will result in reconciliation with our Indigenous sisters and brothers. Many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people live and work in Fort Erie. We stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. We have the good fortune to live in a land of such abundance, diversity, and beauty. Let us be vigilant in protecting Turtle Island.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. And would you all please rise for the invocation?
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. And the roll call, Madam Clerk.
All members of council are present with the exception of Councillor Lewis and Regional Councillor Insina.
Thank you. There is an addendum this evening. That's with respect to some recommendations approved by the Municipal Heritage Standing Committee relative to the People's Community Church plaque. And that's item 11.3. Some very brief announcements. The first has to do with event parking. There have been some events in Fort Erie recently. Most prominent would be the parking at the Crystal Beach Supper Market. And the town's website is the best location for people to obtain timely and accurate information regarding the parking restrictions. The town of Fort Erie fully supports the success of the supermarket and all community events throughout the year, and we will continue to always balance safety with success of these events and the enjoyment of the patrons of the events. As a result of the supper market's positive growth, the town of Fort Erie has implemented specific parking and road closures. They will continue throughout the remaining 6 weeks of the market season, which ends at the end of August. Community safety and emergency access are of the highest concern of the town of Fort Erie and will not be compromised. As we all understand, situations do arise, and these measures ensure residents can receive an emergency response immediately if necessary. We thank the Crystal Beach BIA for its work on the supper market, and we encourage everyone in town and those from out of town to enjoy that supper market. The second announcement relates to a groundbreaking last week. The Minister of Economic Development for the province was in Fort Erie last Tuesday for the groundbreaking for Siltech, which is a new factory that's being constructed on Pettit Road at Gilmore Road to the east of the Truck and Travel Center. Siltech is a company that was founded in 1990. It's a Canadian-owned, family-owned business. It manufactures silicone compounds for a variety of applications, including personal care, cosmetics, inks and coatings, pulp and paper, plastic processing, defoaming, water-resistant coatings, and other applications. The facility itself is going to be 210,000 square feet. It has 3 buildings, which will include offices, a chemistry lab, a warehousing for storage and raw materials. And this opportunity came to us through the province of Ontario, we submitted a site for the province's consideration, and this company, which has factories currently in Toronto and in Mississauga, chose this particular site. We expect that construction will be completed by the end of next year. Starts with between 35 and 50 jobs, will grow to around 75. So congratulations to Siltech. A number of councillors McDermott, Christensen, and Dubanow were in attendance and made their presence known. And the minister was extremely delighted to be here. We'll be coming back to Fort Erie for the ribbon cutting of Abatement Technologies and to do a tour of Airbus down the street, which the province provided some funding for recently for some training programs. The third item I wanted to mention is yesterday, the Fort Erie Sting men's football or soccer team played in the Ontario Cup playdowns. They beat a team, the Ottawa Football Club, yesterday 4-3, which now puts them into the quarterfinals for the Ontario Cup. They're the only team that is not part of the Ontario Soccer League, which means they're the only amateur team still in the competition. They will qualify now because they've qualified for the quarterfinals. They will qualify to enter the Ontario Soccer League, which is a semi-professional league next year. And my understanding is that they're intent on making that application. Their next game is August the 13th, which is 2 Sundays from now, starting at 2 p.m. at Optimus Park. And I don't know the opposition yet, but it will be a very good team. And this is, for anyone who follows English football, this would be like a third or fourth division team making it to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's groundbreaking. So congratulations to the Fort Erie Sting and all of their sponsors and all of the fans that came out. Again, Councillors McDermott and Christensen were there in the blistering heat, and it was hot yesterday. Not much shade on that pitch, but it was an excellent game. And then finally, I just want to wish everyone a happy civic holiday, August the 7th. That's before our next council meeting, so we hope everyone has a safe and enjoyable civic holiday. That then takes us to declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I have a pecuniary interest in bylaw number 114 and bylaw number 122. Both apply to the planning issues on consent, pre-consultation, and planning fees. My husband, in his position as executor for a piece of property on East Avenue, will be going through the process, and he's also a beneficiary in the will.
112 and 114? 122? 114 and 122. Okay. Any others? Madam Clerk, I have a pecuniary interest with respect to item 11.3.2, which is the minutes of the Community Gaming and Development Corporation. There was an allocation in the May 31st, 2023 bingo funds to the Ridgeway Lions Club, and I'm a member of that club, so therefore I'm going to declare a conflict. When we get to that item, I'm going to ask the chair to be taken over by the acting mayor, who is... Councillor Christensen. I'm going to ask you to take the chair when we get to that item. It'll be painless. Just follow the program as we're going along. It'll be no problem. Okay, so that then takes us to notice of upcoming public meetings. There is a proposed community benefits charge meeting scheduled for August the 14th, 2023, which is a council and committee meeting here at the council chambers, 6 p.m. The information report that relates to that will be available 5 p.m. on Wednesday, August the 9th, 2023. In the absence of the regional councillors' presence, we will then go to presentations and delegations. And the first delegation is Bev Bradnam with respect to the council's draft 2023 to 2026 corporate strategic plan. Good evening.
Good evening. And are you going to help me here with the... And then I just use this to click it down? Okay. So thank you for allowing me to present the first draft of your 2023-2026 Corporate Strategic Plan. I'd also like to thank Communications Advisor Kevin Beauchamp. He has helped us develop a kind of a new look for the plan, as well as the CAO for his support in the actual planning process and his leadership. Chris and I worked together on the last plan, so I think we work well together, so I just wanted to thank him as well. Thank you, Councillor McDermott, for the reading of the land acknowledgement. We've included it in the plan now, and we haven't done that before, but we thought it very important to continue to build on those relationships with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, and to include the land acknowledgement in Council's plan. So for those in the audience or listening in, I wanted to provide a brief overview of the process that has taken place to date. So in order to capture the input received during your election campaigns, knocking on doors, council members participated in a detailed survey and then one-on-one interviews with the CAO and myself. The initial survey was structured to reflect council's platforms during the election, what they heard from the community, and included outstanding strategic plan initiatives that still weren't quite complete from the previous plan. And I would note that 4 out of the 7 council members actually participated in that plan and developed that plan as well. So the one-on-one interviews were conducted to identify potential priorities, the importance of some common municipal challenges, and to review and refine the survey results. The next 2 slides do contain a message from the mayor and also your new council pictures as well. Oh, sorry. So in developing the draft plan, council considered the following key elements to strategic planning. So the vision of the community, what we want our community to be, our future state, the mission statement, so our unique purpose and contribution, and one that helps clarify that practical aspect of accomplishing our vision. The strategic priorities or focus areas, we also like to call them pillars during the planning process, are priorities that will be focused on over the next 4 years. And then under each of those pillars, we have strategic objectives. So those are those statements, those goals, what we would like to pursue under each of those. And then strategy to action. So those key initiatives that are specific actions that will help us reach those goals. So council reviewed both the vision and the mission statement, and we had the same vision and mission statement for the last 2 terms of council. So council wanted something a little bit more short and succinct to capture what type of community we strive to be, what we want to be. And we came up with Fort Erie, a community for everyone. And as you'll see in the following slides, all of our strategic objective statements also start with a community. So we've kind of tied that in with our vision statement. The mission statement, council just changed 1 word from the previous one. The previous statement did have the word growth in there, and we replaced growth with achieving prosperity. So to lead and serve Fort Erie by fostering opportunities, leveraging partnerships, and managing our resources to achieve prosperity. So council confirmed the importance of the following key considerations to guide the plan's contents. It had to have a significant impact on the quality of life of our residents. It had to require an investment in time and resources. It had to represent a new direction or maybe intensification of efforts or improved results, and were priorities which the town has control over, can influence, meaningful influence, and contribute to other potential priorities. And it may also have that opportunity to build on or establish partnerships. So the priorities selected are the most important things the town council wants to focus on over this term of council, the things council most wants to accomplish, and where council and the organization will allocate discretionary time, energy, and dollars. So originally at the first workshop that we had with just council members, 3 themes were apparent based on the survey results. However, at council's first workshop, if you recall with all your sticky notes and things, we actually came up with 6 key pillars confirmed. So they are sustainable, reliable access to local health care, quality of life and community well-being, sustainable and managed growth, economic prosperity and diversification, environmental and climate change resiliency, and comprehensive housing options. So strategic objectives were also created for each of these strategic pillars. And as I noted before with the vision statement, each one starts out with a community. So what do we want our community to be as it relates to each of these pillars? So for the healthcare piece, we want a community where all residents have equitable access to comprehensive, community-based, innovative healthcare and social services. For quality of life and community well-being, we want to be that community that is welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and provides opportunities for everyone. For sustainable and managed growth, we want to be that community that manages growth responsibly and recognizes existing neighborhoods by implementing effective planning and policies. Economic prosperity and diversification. We want to be a community that creates opportunities for economic growth and job creation and maximize that strategic location that we have here, close to the U.S., close to larger city centers, and the tourism potential that we have. For environmental and climate change resiliency, we want to be a community that addresses climate change and the impacts to our natural environment by proactive planning and action. And the last one, comprehensive housing options. And a lot of people may think that we don't have a lot to do with housing and what that looks like, but we do have some ways that we can put planning and policies in place. Councillor Dubanow asked that we also include that safe, stable, and appropriate housing. So that was included in the statement as well. So that's the core needs from our housing study. And that we have to have it affordable for all ages, abilities, and income levels. So council and senior staff then developed and confirmed during the second workshop these strategy to actions for each of the key pillars and objective statements. The healthcare, we have 5 under that. So updating, I'll start at the top, collaborating with service providers to develop an innovative healthcare model that will respond to healthcare needs across the community. Very important to council, especially with the 2028 closure of the urgent care center that is coming up fairly quickly, and how we work with those service providers and other levels of government as well to make sure that we have that healthcare locally. Supporting and facilitating collaboration with those local primary healthcare providers to discuss, problem solve, and implement solutions to address community healthcare needs, especially as we grow as a community. Continue to provide investment. Council has done a great job in investing in community healthcare. We've spent over $2 million since 2018 to make sure that we have physician recruitment in place and programs in place for grant funding. So we have to make sure that we have health-related services that promote well-being for all. And looking at updating the physician recruitment and attraction program to address challenges and health system changes, and to advocate for funding from other levels of government and work collaboratively with existing partners. For quality of life and community well-being, so how do we become that welcoming, engaged, and inclusive community? Our first strategy is to develop, approve, and implement a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy and plan and complete applicable training. The CAO has recently unveiled that DEI policy, so now we have to put the plan and the training in place. We also want to make sure that we support and promote the work done by our partners, the Fort Erie Native Friendship Center, the Fort Erie DEI Coalition, the Mayor's Coalition, the Fort Erie Multicultural Center, Niagara Chapter of Native Women, and other community organizations that promote and provide services and unity through diversity, inclusiveness, and reconciliation. We also want to encourage diversity in public office and participation on boards and committees to be more reflective of the community. Foster opportunities to support and promote culture, the arts, and history through education and communication. And the last one under this section, implement a comprehensive plan for parks, recreation, trails, beaches, open space, and natural areas that provides for infrastructure programming and services that meets the needs of the growing community. We do have a pretty comprehensive parks and open space master plan now, but looking at the picture all together with the natural areas included in that and how we are going to fund those was very important to council. Sustainable and managed growth. Some of these pillars we actually, when we initially did it, Chris and I, we had some of them combined, but there were so many initiatives under each that council really thought that they should have their own strategic focus. So for sustainable and managed growth, how are we going to manage that growth in a responsible manner? Updating the official plan, but also looking when we do that, and some of these might be kind of operational issues, but they are still strategically focused. We include those density targets and what that looks like. And based on our community's ability to grow as well. We create urban design guidelines that protect existing neighborhoods, but that include road functions and planned density maybe in behind some of the buildings that are already there. Developing a strategy to accommodate growth through phased servicing. So that's the financial piece there for the phased servicing. And then determine and respond to the impacts of legislation. So as we all know, several provincial bills recently will be impacting growth here, maybe more of an impact on taxpayers because of the fees and the support of growth. And also the last one that the mayor recently added in there was making sure that we actually focus on preserving our natural heritage and what that looks like. The last two, continue to implement policies that will enhance and protect the town's built heritage, include a review of the grant funding program and some key measurements there, and advocate for Niagara Transit Commission to provide data and analytics at the local level to ensure that our ridership and transit availability meets growth and emerging needs. So right now, the region's taken over the transit, but we want to make sure that we also have that partnership in place that when we do grow, our transit grows with us and the ability to access that transit. For economic prosperity and diversification, Council felt it very important to ensure that our focus looked at all types of economic development and included that word diversification to capture that. So the following were developed as key initiatives: updating and implementing the industrial land strategy and ensure that the servicing is there and the funding is in place for the expansion of employment lands to help foster job creation and explore the viability of securing industrial land into town ownership. We also want to look at attracting new business and investment through focused marketing and promotion in key investment areas, and expand the tourism base through the development of a tourism strategy, which will take place either later this year or early next year. We need to support tourism and cultural events through continued promotion, and I think the town does a great job through our community guide and also through our community events calendar, but there may be other ways that we'll look at on how we can promote some of those better. Continue to foster relationships and provide business support through outreach and sector engagement. So bringing back those roundtables and skills nights and networking events and making sure that the town is there hearing from our developers and our business partners on what their needs are. Balance visitor accommodation options that support economic development and diversification. So a lot of talk about short-term rentals, but also a lot of talk about the need for hotels and motels and what that looks like as well. And the last one, pursue and support post-secondary programming and opportunities. And we have a lot of great opportunities coming forward with Sheridan College and FIA and things like that. So making sure some of our strategic focus can be placed on that as well. Oops. For environmental and climate change resiliency, so how do we address climate change? Right now we don't have a climate change plan or policy framework in place, but we are working with the region, some of our staff, on some of those things. So that's one of the strategies to action. But we also need to review and refine policies that preserve and enhance our natural heritage. So updating the tree preservation bylaw, which I know is being done right now that we have an environmental planner on staff, and promote planting on public and private lands as an example. We also want to continue to pursue opportunities and secure and preserve waterfront, natural heritage, and natural areas through public stewardship and acquisition. And a good example of that is the recent purchase of the lands beside Shagbark Nature Trail and how we are public stewards of those lands now. Managing wildlife interactions. So we're seeing that with some of the building that's going on, there's been some wildlife that's been displaced. So how can we increase educational components of that? And then develop a strategy to recognize and protect the natural heritage corridors that have been identified through the NPCA. And as I said, the climate change plan and policy framework, what that looks like, the adaptation, the resiliency, mitigation strategies put in place. And the last one, improve resilience of and response to shoreline protection, stormwater management, drainage and flood control, through infrastructure investments and maintenance. And our last slide, comprehensive housing options. So we were going to look at updating the town planning and policy documents to reflect those community core needs that I had mentioned, the adequacy, suitability, and affordability, looking at proper housing mixes and housing options, and then advocate for innovative funding models, because maybe we can't as a municipality do that, but there are innovative funding models out there that we can work through with other levels of government that will support and promote community-based solutions to address not only the housing options, but also homelessness, social housing, independent living, and supportive housing options. and create a policy framework that supports and incentivizes the development of a broader mix of affordable and attainable housing options, and ensure that the development charges bylaw and community benefit program can be used to incentivize affordable housing construction. So council also discussed how we would measure success and the key targets that would be considered. And so while staff will capture these measurements in more detail, it was important to show at a high level. I'm not going to read them all, but this is how we will show that goalpost. And for the sake of time, I won't go over each measurement, but it is included in the plan. So as you can see by this graphic, and I love this graphic because it does show that interaction, that overlap, that all of the strategies are connected. As an example, by providing reliable access to local health care, the quality of life for our residents and community well-being will flourish. By focusing on the environment and climate change, it will help meet the goals of sustained managed growth. And by providing economic growth and prosperity and ensuring diversification of businesses and industry, it will also help with attainable housing. So this plan is a dynamic tool. It is not static, it will evolve and change, and it will also lead staff work plans and our annual budget and multi-year budgets. And so for next steps, staff are recommending that, similar to previous plans, a community survey be distributed through social media and targeted to community organizations and businesses from July 26th to August 11th to garner feedback and support on the plan's priorities, goals, and initiatives. If there are major changes that come out of those survey results, a follow-up report will come before council. If they're only minor in nature, I'll just come back and do a presentation on the findings and request council adopt the plan by bylaw. We'll also provide updates to council and the community on a frequent basis to show how council's 2023-2026 corporate strategic plan is being implemented and its impacts leading to a community for everyone. Was I under 10 minutes?
Put 16.
Oh,
Okay, in any event, that was very informative and very helpful, and thank you very much for helping us with this process. Presentation was excellent. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I wanted to comment first is that just to thank you and Mr. McQueen for steering us through this process. It can't be easy steering 7 council members and senior staff to come to some consensus, and I think you guys did a great job, and I think the plan will reflect that. Don't you agree?
I do. I do agree.
So that's the lazy
Am I missing
man's question.
something?
Pardon?
Am I missing something?
Yeah. You're supposed to,
I have to ask a question.
supposed to be a question.
So that's why the don't you agree?
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
And so we're presuming your answer is yes.
Yes.
Any,
Yes, I
any
agree.
further questions, Councillor Noyes?
And it wasn't that difficult. You were very all in sync on a lot of these issues, and that became very clear just from the survey results before you even had discussions with each other. It became very clear that there was a great consensus on all of them.
Thank you again, Bev, and no more questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Christensen.
As you're rolling out the strategic plan, could you just describe what you're planning in terms of reaching out to the public and that?
So we've found in the past when we've had open houses, we've only had 2 or 3 people show up. It hasn't been very widely attended. We found that putting the survey out, we do get either probably 87%, yes, we agree. But there's also been some things that maybe we did miss that come to light, and so that's great. So that we'll have hard copies here at Town Hall. We'll also send out targeted ones to community organizations. And if any community organizations want myself or myself and Mr. McQueen to come out and do a presentation on those initiatives, we'd be willing to do that. We did do a brief one with the Chamber of Commerce recently when we were meeting with them and the economic development staff. And so they were very excited to actually get a copy of the draft so they could comment on that as well. And then I will meet with all staff. I've met with all the managers and supervisors already to go over them, so they kind of had an idea of where council's direction was, because a lot of that does flow into their work plans. And so I'll be meeting with all staff after that. And I do that nice 1 page too, and usually staff have that right at their desk at all times. So especially ones that are working on reports and things like that. But yes, feel free if you do have any groups that do want us to come out, that would be great. But having just like a public open house, it doesn't seem to work very well sometimes.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Any other councillors? Thank you very much,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Badnam. I've got a couple of questions when we get to the report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is Claudia Chiesi with respect to Bernard Beach Park. Good evening, Ms. Chiesi.
Good evening, Your Worship, council members. I would like to certainly acknowledge also your kind representation of the Indigenous peoples of Canada and your tribute to Ukraine. I think I was chosen to be the spokesperson for the Bernard Beach Park because I'm the oldest active person who functions at the beach. There may be others, but I haven't met them yet. So on behalf of my family and my friends, the neighbors, I would like to, I believe you have a copy of the narrative, so I certainly won't be reading that word for word, but I'd like to begin with, sir, if you would load up there's a brief video. It's beginning now. Yes, please. And you're now moving down from a slight incline at the beach area, and it's moving closer towards the water. You see a platform to the right. This is covered with stones, and now you're about to approach the water's edge. And therein you will begin to see large rocks, some of them submerged, others not. And again, stones are there. Now you're at what is the fence, and again, the stones, the rocks, and you see this muck and mire that is the beach. And it'll pan slightly over towards the west end of the beach. This is a very small area, but again, it gives you a sense of this is what Bernard Beach Park looked like from the time I showed up in March through June. And this particular, again, this is moving now towards the west, again, more rocks, and now we're finished. This is what you see in the water. It's referred to by multiple names, often called the sediment barrier or the soil something barrier. It has other names. But anyway, this is it by the meters, and that's what you saw with the sand, the mud, the rocks. And this still exists as of this afternoon, so I want to be clear about two other things. And then what this happened was that in the May time period, just before Victoria Day, I said, I got to do something. You know, what can I do? You can't rake it. The stuff is, it's immovable. So I called the town and was given over to Mr. Fitzgerald, and we had a lovely conversation about this was the condition. And again, this is the end of May. We were, those of us who visit with relatives over holidays, knew people were coming and wanted to be at the beach. So Mr. Fitzgerald took my call, we talked. And then subsequent to that, between then and Canada Day, I left multiple messages, 4 and 5 messages. A slight improvement was made, meaning the worst that you saw, sir, if you could go to the next single photo. Yes, this is the area just on Canada Day, on July 1st. And so you can see that some of the, you can go to the second one, please, sir? Yeah, it sort of shifted and it moves over here. Now this is, I am neither a geologist nor an engineer, but this is the natural give and take of what's happening at that beach under the circumstances that we find ourselves with the platform, with the culvert that expels water into the area. So over this time period, again, relatives, friends, neighbors, both Canadian and US, all property owners, all vested interest people, and by that I mean people who care about this place. We're not banshees. This is more of a Valkyrie. These are people who are careful and interested in making this the best they can be. So over this time period, again, I'm not reading this verbatim, but giving you the larger picture, people would show up and they'd say, geez, what a mess. This is, and then the second one was the most telling, was they told us there was a beach here. So I said, who is they? What, yeah, well, we're from Mississauga. We drove down there and they said that there was a beach. Well, it turns out that they is us, was this. And this little guy on page 43, which I'm sure the town has paid for in this publication and the dissemination, chooses of all of the adjectives in the vocabulary English, gorgeous sandy beach, enjoying the gorgeous sandy beach. And we're all standing there going, what are you talking about? We don't know. So this was the dilemma, the crux of the issue. This was the tipping point. This was all of the above. And so the initial video shows you that. Sir, if you would go to the next. This is slightly improved area. And we found ourselves, obviously this is unusable. It's inaccessible. It's dangerous. This is all slippery stuff going on here. There are no organic things like dead fish or anything like that, but it's all other material. And you can't access it unless you can like pole vault over the platform. You simply couldn't get into the beach, which forced the third piece of concern was that you had to go around the fences onto people's private property. So now we were trespassing in order to get access into the water. We heard some of the, more, I want to say silly but curious suggestions. Well, why don't we just go and get the sand from the private beaches and we could move it over and we could put, well, I don't know about that part. But anyway, now we're into theft, so we didn't go there. And the land area continued to be covered with thousands, I didn't count them all, but thousands of medium-sized stones which were separate from the rocks. And you could not lay a towel or a blanket. You could, if you were talented enough, put up some kind of a chair, but it was a little bit wobbly. And movement was apparent between July 1st and then on the 13th of July when I talked with Mr. Fitzgerald again. And he recommended me to Mr. Hutton, who he said he does the sand. Because I said, all we're doing is shuffling the stones, and if you would please, sir, the next, we're trying, but it's not making much headway. So jump to last week. If I were talking to you last Monday, this would be wholly and completely and everything was as you see it. But starting last Tuesday, as of up to this afternoon, my good friend Carla Holiski was at the beach. There have been improvements, and I want to acknowledge that. I don't know who did it. Mysteriously, rocks were moved. This stuff is still there in the water, but you can access the water. There is a load of sand. What does she mean by a load of sand? I don't know, a couple cubic yards, but it's sand. And if you would please, sir, jump to Centralia. And this is the sand that I remember from my childhood, from my teen years, from my old age at 50 and 60. And the next one, please. Moving down, this is Thunder Bay sand. This is beach area sand, and then the third one. And look at that gorgeous beach. That is the beach that we have known and loved, but it's not Bernard Beach Road. This is Centralia, last Saturday. That is the beach, the gorgeous sandy beach, but it's listed here under Bernard Beach. And I leave you with both, my gratitude that you allowed me the opportunity to do this, and a plea that you are our last ray of hope There are no other places for us to go to both maintain the property and to experience it as a wonderful community endeavor, a group of people who are concerned and interested. And I leave you with my respect and my gratitude for having the opportunity. And if there are questions, I would be happy to
Thank you very
engage.
much, Ms. Casey, for coming out and providing us with that background and the photographs. This has been, I want to commend you for coming forward. This has been a problem beach since work was done probably a dozen years ago or more.
Yes.
To reroute the water down there. We have tried on several occasions to figure out a solution. One of the comments you didn't make was that to get onto the deck, if you have an accessibility issue, you can't get over those big rocks.
That's right.
So that's another issue. I'm glad that the staff is trying to respond to this, but hopefully the council will see fit to ensure that something is done of a more significant manner so that next year people won't be suffering through the same predicament this year.
And I appreciate that, sir, because it's obvious that with the ebb and flow of life and the natural order of things, this will be a constant dilemma. This, it does need rehabilitation, particularly from Victoria Day to Labor Day, but, I'm not an expert at that, but how it's done, again, is you and the staff, and I acknowledge, again, those who have helped us. Thank you very much, appreciate your time.
Don't go away.
Oh,
Any other members
okay.
of council have any questions? I know that Councillor Christensen has been on staff as well. This is her ward, and she's been very active on that.
Right.
We could wait for Mother Nature to do its thing, but I think we need to act before
Yes.
then. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, thank you again.
Okay, that takes us then to the next item, which is the public meeting, and we have a public meeting regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and draft plan of condominium for 3033 Dominion Road. And this is a public meeting under the Planning Act. Council will hear from the town's planner, Darrell Vanderveen, who will provide us with some background information. Then there will be an opportunity for the proponent or the proponent's agent to provide comment to council. Once that's been done, both Mr. Vanderveen and the proponent will be subject to questions from members of council. Once that's been completed, anyone who wishes to speak on behalf of the application other than the proponent may do so. Then I will ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application or to ask questions of members of council. And then when that's completed, the meeting will be declared closed if all matters have been resolved, and then we'll go to the report which deals with the matter. It's an information report for council's consideration, and councilors will have questions at that point. So why don't we start with Mr. Vanderveen, and we'll get the public meeting started.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor Redekop, members of council, members of the public here in attendance at the meeting, and anybody who may be following this on Zoom or YouTube. This public meeting is for proposed plan of subdivision, plan of common elements, condominium, and zoning bylaw amendment for 3303 Dominion Road. The owner is 13804-003 Canada Inc., and the principal behind that is Ahmed Dagger. The agent is NPG Planning Solutions Limited, and the primary contact for them is Jesse Ospitz. So the purpose of this public meeting is to provide information regarding the proposed applications with the intent of developing 13 block townhouses that will front onto an internal private road. The zoning is proposed to change from Neighborhood Development ND 482 zone to a site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1 zone to permit the block townhouse dwellings. The site-specific RM1 zoning will contain special provisions to implement the development plan. Notification of the July 24, 2023 public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the June 29, 2023 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, all property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of complete application in public meeting on July 4th, 2023. So So this is a timeline of the application development process. In accordance with Bill 109, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is subject to a 90-day processing and review timeline. The clock starts the date that the application is deemed complete, which was June 9th, 2023, and will stop when council makes a decision on the application. Today marks day 45 of the 90-day time frame. So just to go through some milestones, pre-consultation for this development was originally held last year, July 28th, 2022. An application was received earlier this year. The municipality deemed it complete on June 9th, 2023. A public information open house was held on June 27th, 2023. And this evening is the statutory public meeting and information report, July 24th, 2023. And staff is looking to bring forward a recommendation report, hopefully in August. The subject property is located in the Ridgeway Thunder Bay neighborhood of the town of Fort Erie on the south side of Dominion Road. The site is approximately 0.41 hectares in area. The following summarizes the land uses surrounding the subject property. To the north, single detached dwellings, hazard area associated with a floodplain, in open space owned by the town. To the south, single detached dwellings. To the east, vacant residential land associated with the South Ridge Meadows development. And to the west, single detached dwellings and hazard area associated with floodplain. The subject property is currently designated low-density residential in the town's Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan and the town's official plan. The secondary plan permits medium-density development in areas designated as low-density residential through a zoning bylaw amendment application if one or more of the following criteria is met. 1, within walking distance to the downtown core mixed use. 2, within walking distance to the Gorham Commercial Gateway. 3, preferably along arterial and collector roads within the plan area. Or 4, in close proximity to amenity spaces such as parks, open space trails, or natural feature areas. In this instance, the subject property is located along an arterial road, Dominion Road, and is in close proximity to Shagbark Park, open space area on Burley Road North. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment to permit townhouses on the subject property complies with the secondary plan policy. The Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan establishes a density of 25 to 75 units per hectare for medium density residential areas. The proposed density of this development is 31.71 units per hectare. There are no natural heritage features, natural hazard areas, or fish habitat on the subject property as identified in the town's official plan. The property is also not identified as having any archaeological potential on Schedule D of the town's official plan. The subject property is currently zoned Neighborhood Development ND 528 zone in the town zoning bylaw. The existing ND 482 zoning only permits existing single detached dwellings and as existing lot area. The proposed townhouse dwellings and plan of subdivision and plan of common elements condominium require a zoning bylaw amendment. The zoning of the property is proposed to change to a site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1 zone. So just to illustrate, there's kind of 2 levels to this. There's a plan of subdivision and a plan of condominium. So just for reference, this is aerial imagery of the subject property. This is the proposed plan of subdivision. So there will be 3 blocks. Block 1 is intended for 7 townhouse dwellings. Block 2 is intended for 6 townhouse dwellings. And block 3 is intended for the common elements condominium. That would be the shared access road, visitor parking, things of that nature. So this is the plan of condominium. Again, that would only apply to block 3, the common lands. The individual townhouse parcels will be established through part lot control if this application is approved. This is the site plan for the subject property. Again, the application is proposing to rezone the property to a site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1 zone. So just to illustrate some of the zoning departures, there's a reduced access driveway width of 7.6 meters. The standard requirement is 6.5 meters for two-way traffic. They're also proposing an increase in maximum lot coverage. This would be from 40% to 41%. They're proposing reduced minimum landscaped area. This will be from 50% to 29%. They're also proposing reduced planting strip widths of 0. According to the current site plan, not all of the planting strips will be 0. The planting strip on the east side at the rear of the units would be 0 meters. However, further south, it's actually 1.3 meters. The setback to the southern lot line would be 1.1 meters, and the planting strip width on the west side would be 0.5 meters. On the north side, the majority of the planting strip would be 4.5 meters, aside from where a deck encroaches into the front yard. They also require a reduced distance of a parking area to a lot line. Again, this would be more to the southeastern lot line and the southern lot line. The southeastern corner is 1.3 meters. The standard requirement would be 3 meters. And the parking area to the southern lot line would be 1.1 meters. The standard requirement is 3 meters. Just a couple notes on the site plan, comments we've received from staff and agencies. The Fort Erie Fire Department has asked that a hydrant be included in the development. The nearest hydrant is within 90 meters of all the units, but it's on the other side of Dominion Road. And that poses an issue. If they have to run a hose across the road, it would actually block the street. So a condition of approval will be that a hydrant be located within the proposed development. Our development engineering staff have also requested that a peer review be done for the servicing, functional servicing report. So we're working with the applicant to have that completed. We're awaiting the fee, and then that peer review will be completed, and we will have that information before staff brings a recommendation report forward for council's consideration. So this is a 3D render of the proposed development. This would be looking into the site from Dominion Road looking south. So you could see block 1 on the right side of the screen. Block 2 would be on the left side of the screen. This is a more zoomed version of block 1. This is the southern elevation, so this would be looking at the block 1 units front on from Dominion Road. This would be looking at block 2, looking east, so this would be the east elevation. Fortunately, I wasn't able to fit all the units in there, but this is what the front facade, if you're standing on the private road, would look like. This is a site photo of the property, looking south from Dominion Road. You can see the public notice signs there. This is also looking south into the property from Dominion Road. I just wanted to note in the report, I mentioned that I thought the existing dwelling had been removed, but as you can see in the photo, it is still there. Just to touch on the information open house, again, it was held in the atrium of Town Hall on June 27, 2023. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands were notified of the information open house via public notice, mailed on June 13, 2023. The information open house meeting was attended by 2 members of the public who owned adjacent property. The primary concerns were screening from the proposed development and tree preservation. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Veen. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. To you too. Sorry, I forgot your name.
Mr. Van der Veen.
Mr. Van der Veen, I should know that, it's Dutch.
Well, what's his name?
Anyway, I'm sorry, just one of those Freudian slips, I guess. In regard to the planting strip, on the east side, there's nothing, right? It's 0. And on the west side, it's 0.50, right?
That is correct through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Noyes, as shown on their site plan. Historically, planning has interpreted the planting strip as being part of the privacy area. It's not a discrete setback like, say, from the building to a lot line. So although it does appear to be really small, there is a considerable amount of planting strip if it's included within the privacy area.
Well, thank you for that, but it's not. Like, I mean, there still isn't a planting strip. So if someone, like, I'm looking at the backyards here, and, okay, from the covered, from the porch, I guess, to the lot line, how much room are we looking at?
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Noyes, that's about 3 meters, depending on which part of the development you're looking at.
Okay, now, do you know if there's going to be a swale on that or not?
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Noyes, we're working with our development engineering staff to confirm that as conditions of approval. So we will note in the recommendation report if swales or easements are required.
And just to that end, not knowing whether there's going to be a swale or not, that would pretty much take up at least half of the 3 meters.
Through Mayor Redekop, Councillor Noyes, that's true, although typically a swale, it would still be landscaped like backyard area, you just wouldn't be able to build any structures on it.
Well, I've seen swales and they don't look like a backyard, they look like a swale. But anyway, have we ever approved something that had absolutely no planting strip?
Through Mayor Redekop, Councillor Noyes, we can review some recent developments and include a comprehensive review of that in the recommendation report.
Okay, and I guess my other concern is that it's fine when you're not planning any planting strips on this because there's nothing on either side of it, right? Like there's basically on the east side, you're going to have another development at some point in the future, on the west side perhaps also. So when there's no planting strips or there's no room for a planting strip, it's not so, it doesn't appear to be a problem, but would you not think that the people to the east or the west of this property may have some concerns?
Through Mayor Redekop, Councillor Noyes, we haven't received any feedback from the public in opposition to that, although obviously we'll hear what people have to say at tonight's public meeting and any comments that are submitted going forward.
And is there any fencing going in?
Through Mayor Redekop, Councillor Noyes, yes, the intent is to install fencing for screening the development from adjacent lands.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Vanderveen, thank you very much. You actually just kind of hinted on, or rather alluded to the answer I was hoping to hear with regard to the requests or the comments by the residents regarding screening of the property and tree preservation. A fence would certainly help. Have there been any further discussions or with residents or the developer about how those issues can be rectified with regard to the tree preservation and screening from adjacent properties?
Through Mayor Redekop, Councillor Dubanow, we'll see what the agent has to say. Some discussion did occur at the information open house between staff, the agent, and the members of the public that attended. I think it was positive overall. So yeah, maybe the agent can provide more info if there's been any further discussion since that meeting.
No, I appreciate that. If the agent's going to speak, perhaps I'll have an opportunity to ask them. Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderveen, Your Worship.
Other councillors. Councillor Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderveen, for your presentation and following up on Councillor Noyes and Councillor Dubanow's concern about the planting strip and the number of people who presented. Is it not correct that there are no residents to the east of the proposed development because that's South Ridge under construction?
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Christensen, yes, that's correct. And then when I went on the site visit this weekend, they're actually starting to move some earth around and work on that subdivision. So those lands are completely vacant for a considerable distance. The nearest residential that adjacent to the lands would be to the south and to the southwest. There is a single detached dwelling to the west, but it looked like it was unoccupied upon my visit.
So through you, Mayor Redekop, so there aren't a lot of existing people to comment on the potential impact of the narrow or the non-existent planting strips?
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Christensen, yes, that's true.
Thank you.
Mr. Patton, Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Vanderveen. Looking through and the walkability of this location. There are no internal sidewalks planned for this, even though we have a rather narrow roadway.
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Flagg, that is correct. Although if that's something council wants staff to explore, we can follow up with the applicant on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Patton, I wonder if you could put up the schematic with the outlay of the townhouses on the parcel? That's it, perfect, thank you. So, Mr. Vanderveen, looking at this, it appears to me that every inch of that parcel is going to be covered with something. I can't imagine a tree preservation plan will result in any preservation of trees. Any comments on that?
Through Mayor Redekop, I would say that's accurate. The tree preservation plan, you know, there might be the odd one here and there, but it would be more looking towards not disturbing any trees, any street trees that may exist or any trees on adjacent lands.
We have a former councillor that used to talk about these types of developments, and he used the phrase, trying to put 10 pounds of sugar into a 5-pound bag. That kind of strikes me as what's happening here. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, how this fits in with the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly provide some more detailed analysis in the recommendation report. You know, we're still formulating all of our opinions on this. So we can expand on that as part of that, if that works.
Well, it will work because this is a situation where we can see that you've highlighted for us all of the changes that are being proposed for the zoning that's being proposed to be utilized. I'm not sure why RM1 was selected. I suppose that's the one that's closest to this type of development. And that RM1 zoning has requirements, has setbacks and what have you. So that this one has at least 5 areas where they want a further modification. So it's not just, I think, and you can clarify this for me, it's not just a modification of the current zoning, it's a modification of the proposed zoning.
That is correct.
And these are 2-story units, which leads me to believe that it's, and you may not know the answer to this, but leads me to believe that this is a housing development for families.
Yeah, certainly we could see if the agent has any comments on who the units are marketed towards.
And if it is for children, there's virtually no backyard here, correct?
It does meet the minimum privacy area of 4.5 meters. So it is meeting the RM1 zone requirement for that.
And in terms of parks, the park that you've identified as being closest is Shagbark Trail. And then there's also, of course, the recreation trail. And then you've identified Dominion Road as an arterial road, which would justify at least an application to change the density from low density to medium density. But there's no playground. The closest playground would be over at the Village Square in downtown Ridgeway.
Yes, and there is another playground kind of south and east in the Thunder Bay neighborhood, but it's a pretty considerable distance.
Well, that would be further away if you're talking about the one on Nicholas Street, I guess, and the one that my daughter lives on. Hyman, yeah. Okay, so that'd be even further away. Okay, I'm fine for now. I have some questions for the proponent or the proponent's agent. Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderveen.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, before you go, Councillor Noyes has a follow-up.
Yes, I'm just looking at the report and also your presentation. What is in the report, the first report, well, the proposed zoning bylaw, the one that you've presented?
I wonder if that should be saved for when we get the report on the floor.
I can save it.
Okay. Thanks very much, Mr. Vanderveen.
Thank you.
So now, if there's anyone who wishes to speak on behalf of the applicant. And you are Jesse Ospitz?
I am not Jesse Ospitz. I'm Max Fedishak. I'm here on behalf of Jesse. Jesse, I believe, is attending virtually.
Okay, and your last name is spelled?
FEDCHYSHAK.
Thank you. Please proceed.
All right, perfect. So through you, Mr. Mayor, as I mentioned, my name's Max Fedishak, and I'm a planner with NPG Planning Solutions, and I'll be making a brief presentation related to this application. Is this perfect? So I'll try and fly through some of this as it's repetitive with what Darrell presented already, but the subject lands are located on the south side of Dominion Road and Arterial Road, and east of the Burley Hill North and Dominion Road intersection. The subject lands are surrounded by residential uses, and they are designated as low-density residential within the town's official plan. As mentioned, the secondary plan does permit higher-density residential uses within low-density if criteria are met. And currently, there is a two-story single-detached dwelling located on the subject lands. So the proposed development features 2 townhouse blocks consisting of 13 residential units. All units will be fronting onto a private road. Each unit will have a front portico, balcony, and a rear covered terrace, and also a balcony. So similarly to Darrell's presentation, this is the concept plan and the common element, draft plan of condo elements on the right. So I will just move forward. And as also discussed by Darrell, there are several site-specific provisions proposed, including related to minimum lot coverage, minimum side yard setback, minimum landscape area, ingress and egress, and planting strip. So as mentioned, there was an open house on June 27th, 2023. 2 neighbors living south of the subject lands attended the open house and provided comments relating to the application. 2 comments were received relating to the provision of screening fences along the southern lot line and impacts the development will have on trees located on the neighbor's property. So our clients are very eager to seek to build a positive relationship with all the neighbors. So following the public meeting, I discussed with them the provision of a screening fence along the southern lot line, and they agreed that a screening fence will be installed according to the town fence policy, bylaw, I'm sorry. So the exact design of the fence is to be determined, but there will be a fence provided on the southern lot line. Regarding the tree impacts, following the open house, our client voluntarily retained an arborist to conduct a tree impact analysis to evaluate the impacts the proposed development will have on the trees located on adjacent lands. Note that this tree impact analysis was not required as part of a complete application, but our client wanted to conduct it as an act of good faith. We're awaiting the final report, but we've received preliminary findings earlier today from the arborists, and the preliminary findings state that the trees to the south can be preserved with appropriate mitigation measures during construction, and if requested, that final report can be forwarded to town staff for their review once received. So that's all I have for now. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fedishak. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you for your presentation. What is the size of the backyards, and is it different on the east side or the west side of the townhouses?
They are slightly different. So from the rear wall of the dwelling to the property line is just shy of 6 meters. The west, I believe, is 5.8 around there, and the east would be 5.3. So between 5 and 6 meters. And the zoning bylaw for block townhouses requests 6 meters.
Thank you.
Mr. Fedishak, just to be clear, 5.3 to 5.8 isn't between 5, it is between 5 and 6, but it's not 5 to 6.
Sorry, apologies.
So looking at the schematic that we had up there before, how many trees do you think can be protected other than at the southerly end of this parcel?
I'd have to reach out back to the arborist to get confirmation, as I only inquired about the trees along the southern lot line. But from my earlier discussions with them, they provided mitigation measures, which I anticipate would be able to protect most trees, if not all, outside of the property boundary.
Right, so no trees on the parcel?
No, my understanding that all trees on the parcel will be removed to facilitate the development. As there's no, there's no tree conservation policies that apply to the subject lands.
And yet there's a tree preservation plan requested.
The tree through you, Mr. Mayor, the tree preservation plan was requested by the residents to the south. Correction, the tree preservation plan was not formally requested. The client decided to conduct the tree preservation plan due to comments being raised by residents to the south regarding the impacts the proposed development would have on their trees. So,
Has your client been able to ascertain what the price point might be for these units?
I don't know that information, I'm sorry.
Well, maybe the applicant would like to zoom in on this, if he's wanting to. Mr. Patton, apparently he's in the room.
I moved him already, Your Worship. He should be able to speak now.
Okay. This is Mr. Dogger.
Okay, hello?
Hello?
Sorry, through the chair, I'm Jesse, I'm working with Max at MPG.
Okay, so you work for Max. You're not the owner. You're just an assistant.
Oh, no, I'm his supervisor. Like, I'm a senior planner at MPG. We don't have the price point for the units.
Well, that was productive.
Sorry, I just,
Maybe you can answer that. Maybe you can answer my next question, and that is, how much did your client pay for the property?
I don't have that information.
Do you know what his return on investment is?
I don't have that information.
Okay. So maybe Mr. Fedishak can continue on. In terms of the property itself, either you or Mr. Hospitz, I guess, do you know if this is being marketed to families?
I don't have that information, I'm sorry.
All right. It would be, I suppose, unusual if it were to be marketed to seniors, since these are two-story homes. Mm-hmm. You would agree?
I'm not an expert on marketing, so I can't provide any insight regarding that, I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Councillor Christensen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was wondering whether you had given consideration in the design to some of the provisions within our official plan that we prefer developments to be harmonious with the neighborhood, and that one of those features is maintaining some of the tree coverage and ameliorations, environmental ameliorations that provide a pleasant view in addition to the actual design of the homes.
Sorry.
In other words, our official plan
Yes.
is looking to developments that are harmonious with the surrounding community, and we've given a great deal of attention in the developments approved to date to do that. In what way does this particular development provide that sort of harmony with the surrounding community?
I'll let Jesse, as he has his hand up.
Sorry, through the chair. I think the way that this development maintains the harmony with the existing built form is it keeps that low-rise residential built form. I'd like to also point out that there is several, this area is a changing area. There are a lot of, there are a lot of large lots that are being developed over time. So, for example, directly to the east of the subject lands, there's a South Ridge development, which includes primarily semi-detached, which includes almost exclusively semi-detached dwellings, as well as 4 single detached dwellings. There's also the recent, relatively recent subdivision to the north. But anyways, the way it maintains the harmony with the existing built form is it keeps to that low-rise residential character which surrounds it and is currently being developed.
Councillor Christensen?
Through you, Your Worship, but it doesn't retain some of the plantings, or it doesn't encourage the plantings that provide significant attraction in the development to the north and that are in the proposed, in the approved development to the east.
That was a statement. It's supposed to be a question. And
Okay.
I think that's pretty evident.
And it was a question, and it does sort of. Okay, I was asking for
Or to use
confirmation.
Councillor Noyes' phrase, don't you agree?
Yeah, okay. Okay, don't you agree?
I mean, it does, we are mitigating impacts to trees on adjacent properties. The subject lands, in order to accommodate the development, we would have to remove most, if not all, trees from the subject lands.
Just one more question, and I'm shifting slightly. The existence of Shagbark Park, which is an environmentally attractive and sensitive walking area on the northeast side of Burleigh and Dominion, is being identified as one of the open space areas. My concern is that in terms of access from the development, it means crossing a heavily used arterial road, and actually the crossing of Burleigh, which is increasingly heavy. So I'm just wondering, has there been any thought as to how residents can easily access Shagbark Park? In terms of it being considered as a recreational area.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. There is a sidewalk located on the northern side of Dominion Road, so that would provide safe pedestrian access to the park from the north side of the street. But from my understanding, no, I haven't looked into the provision of any safe crossing or anything.
Thank you.
Could I add to that? Would I be able to add to that statement?
Yes, of course.
I know through the chair, there are several developments that are happening directly in the south side of Dominion Road. So in regard to safe access to that park, would that not be a town matter to address comprehensively?
Well, it would be, and that's one of the reasons why the request is being made for the sidewalk on the frontage of this property over to Burleigh Road, as an example. But the municipality isn't alone in responsibility for new development. I mean, to some extent, the new development has to show that it can be integrated into the existing landscape, which is why we're here. And, yeah. Any other members of council? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship, and through you to the presenters this evening. Just to touch on what Councillor Christensen was mentioning, and the mayor, as he did say, there will be sidewalks in front of this development on the south side. There's going to be sidewalks continuing as well with the development immediately to the east. But with regards to this specific development and the fact that there will be sidewalks and there's some concerns about integration, trees, and other matters, has there been any discussion about any kind of treescaping plan or anything on the front side of the property, utilizing the sidewalks in a way that we can, I don't know, kind of shield this, because they're all side-facing houses. They all face the internal street. And they're going to be looking at the sides of the buildings on Dominion Road. So is there any consideration giving to tree coverage or planting, shrubs, anything of that nature to kind of integrate natural heritage into this development as it faces the front of Dominion Road?
Sir, through the chair, we haven't provided a landscape plan. We're happy to have that discussion with our client if it's something that would assist in council's consideration. So we're happy to provide that. I guess that would also fill council's request about providing that landscaped, well-treated areas and address the comments with respect to character generally, I believe, correct?
Okay. I appreciate that, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. In regards to, okay, if we held you to the requirements of the size of the backyard, the rear backyard, and the planting strip, and the landscaping area not to be reduced to 29% from 50%, collectively, like if, okay, so you have to put the planting strip in, you have to put the landscaped area has to be 50%, and you have to do the rear yard setbacks as, without any exception, so to speak. How would that affect this development? How many, the numbers in regards to your planning now for, I think, 13?
Sorry, through the chair. Yes, right now the proposed development consists of 13 townhouse units, but I can't give a concrete answer as to how it would impact the total number of units on the site.
In regards to when you start planning this, do you start off saying we want to put 13, or do you say, okay, this is only, these are the regulations, these are the rules, we can only put in 10? But we can put in 13 if we ask for all these exceptions. So you don't start with what you can do and then where you're going to ask for exceptions?
Why don't we let Mr. Ospitz speak to that because he's the principal planner.
Sorry, through the chair. If we were to remove units, I think part of the consideration is you would have to have an appropriate floor plan. So if we were to, let's say, reduce the number of units, I'm not sure that we would actually be able to meet, or still meet the town requirements with respect to with respect to landscaping requirements in the town zoning bylaw. One other point I'd like to comment on is that the landscape requirement doesn't really accounts for private property and doesn't really consider the fact that these lands will have a private road. This private road works against the development. Typically, if there's a public road, you don't factor in a public road for a landscaped open space. In this case, the road being private, you have to factor it in for the landscaped open space. So that's where a lot of the deficiency arises.
Councillor Noyes?
Well, I can appreciate, I can definitely see that if you have to put a road in, it's going to take up property, and that you may not be able to put in townhouses along this,
Sure.
So I understand that, but at the same point, I am concerned about the lack of the landscaped area. I know it's not a huge increase in the coverage of the lot area, but no planting strip, decreased.
Okay, we're getting into discussion now, Councillor Noyes.
Okay, I'll wait.
Any other councillors? Thank you very much, Mr. Fedishak. That then takes us to anyone who wishes to speak in support of the application other than the proponent. There being none, then I'll go to anyone who wishes to speak in opposition. Well, we're not there yet. Oh, who wishes to speak for, who's online? Mr. Patton, can you check to see if anyone wishes to speak in support of the application who's online?
There's one person in favor, Your Worship. I'm just waiting to see if a hand goes up.
Okay, if the hand, so please put your hand up if you want to speak in support of the application. This is one person other than Mr. Ospitz. See a hand raised? Okay, so I'm going to go to anyone who wishes to speak in opposition or ask questions of members of council. And yes, please come forward. And we need your name and address for the record.
Marie Alexander, 3281 Charleston Drive.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and council members. I wasn't able to attend the June 27th meeting, which was held previously, only because I didn't pick up my mail, so not your fault, my fault. But I would make a comment that not everybody gets the post, So it's not always easy to see what's being proposed. And even when you ask for the post, you still don't get it. So I'll just make that note before I get started. So I live across from the development that's being proposed at 3303 Dominion Road. And while Greater Fort Erie is growing at a pace that has longtime residents spinning, I support managed growth. However, my major concern is the clear cutting of natural resources without a tree preservation plan. On this particular parcel, there are two beautiful 100-year-old trees that I'm hearing are going to be ripped down. There has already been one taken out for the very large development to the east of this parcel, and it's concerning because, well, and I hope they'll be preserved not only for their natural beauty, but for the contribution they make to the health and welfare of those living in the area. Things such as oxygen, water conservation, improved air quality, which the climate change already is impacting. Looking at the proposed development drawing, this could possibly be achieved, and what I mean by being achieved is the tree preservation by shifting the visitor parking from the southeast side to the northeast side of the parcel, or by eliminating one of the units or the unit number 8 on the northeast of the development shown on the plan. The large development to the east causes concern with regard to the planting strip, obviously, because as Councillor Noyes pointed out, if there's a swale, I mean, you can't put anything there. You can't put trees there. If there's no fence, you can't put evergreens or whatever into the swale because you still need to make room for the water drainage that needs to take place. And there is an additional concern about sidewalks, because I know that the sidewalk on the north side of Dominion that crosses through our on-street from Charleston over is only a portion of a sidewalk, and then you have to walk out onto Dominion before you get to Burley, cross Burley to get to the next sidewalk. So there's a concern. If that was a completed sidewalk, it might be a different story, but it's not. And for children to access a park that is several kilometers down the road or whatever into Thunder Bay, there are no sidewalks in the Thunder Bay area. You walk down Burley, you walk on the street. You walk down Bernard, you walk down the street. So the traffic is increasing with the number of properties that are being built, and it needs to be considered. So I guess I really had two concerns tonight after hearing the discussion. One was the tree preservation, because they are beautiful, they're old, and it's a shame to lose that natural beauty and resource. And two, the sidewalks that won't be there. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alexander. Before you go, are there any members of council that have any questions? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Yes, please come forward, ma'am.
Yes, good evening, Your Worship and Councilman. My name is Anita Zankin. I live at 3310 Parker Avenue. So mine, or my husband's and my property is the one that is just to the south of the proposal. And it's, we were the two people that showed up on June the 27th. We are very concerned at the common space proposal because the tree preservation is why I'm speaking now, is we have a, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. We have a line of old trees, pines, there's a willow tree, there's just like huge aged growth of these trees that line that property, the north end of our property, which would be directly affected by any kind of building. As we know, pine trees have shallow root systems. Any, there's a 1 meter, if I saw that correctly, there's a 1 meter allowance from our property to the common space. And I think that will greatly affect the stability of the trees, and what if they fall on our home or on any of those homes, who is responsible for that? Because I'm concerned that it'll weaken the root base. And like the former Miss Alexander spoke about the beauty of those aged trees, how they scrub the air clean. We're really fortunate. We've been there 28 years and we really enjoy that view from our kitchen window. And any buildings there might enjoy that view as well, to be surrounded by the beauty of these pines from our yard. So I just wanted to draw that attention.
Thank you, Ms. Ankin. Just for clarification, so your property is immediately south of this parcel?
Yes, sir.
And these trees are on your property?
Yes, sir.
But there will be a parking area that will be at the very rear of this proposed development? And that's your concern? Okay.
And have, like, the trees are on our property, but of course, the branches and the boughs are leaning over where the proposed space is.
They do that, don't they? Any members of council have any questions of Ms. Ankin? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this matter? Then, Mr. Patton, anyone in the waiting room that has put up their hand to address council?
Those two people, just Jesse, we're waiting for the other person, but I don't see it yet.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the clerk if we've received any late-minute communications with respect to this application.
There were none, Mayor Redekop.
Thank you. Then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed. And I'm going to go back to the agenda, and Councillor Dubanow, you have the resolution to put this on the floor.
I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Flagg that Council receives report PDS 51-2023 for information purposes regarding a proposed draft plan of subdivision, draft plan of common elements condominium, and zoning bylaw amendment for 3303 Dominion Road.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow and then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I just, to formalize some of the comments by the residents, when this comes back for a recommendation report, I certainly do hope that we'll have an opportunity to see that arborist report for tree preservation, particularly the stability of the trees for the property to the south. I completely understand where they're coming from. I'd be a little concerned if I had trees as well, and I wouldn't want to lose them about something that went on that wasn't on my property. So that's definitely a concern I think we need to address. With regard to pedestrian accessibility, Shagbark Park to the north, I don't know who the appropriate authority would be to look at this, because Dominion Road is a regional road. So we're running into multiple levels of government here that have jurisdiction over the various roads in the area. But as we continue to construct a sidewalk on the south side, we already have the sidewalk on the north. The Friendship Trail is in that area. We're also going to have the new subdivision going into the east. All the residents who live in that area, they're going to need access to parks, amenities. Downtown Ridgeway it's a little bit of a walk, but you can still walk there, and, hoping to get people out walking. I think we really need to look at some sort of safe pedestrian crossing along Dominion Road in the area, like a PXO, like a pedestrian crossover with the flashing lights. I don't know where the appropriate area would be. I don't know Bernard, Burley, Charleston. I don't know where in that area, but I think it's really something we need to look into. As development charges bylaws go along, these are really things that we have to look at, is how these subdivisions integrate the way we get people to safely cross roads. We don't have traffic lights everywhere in this town. Dominion Road is getting busier, so that would be my only concern, and especially with the way the transition from the 70 zone to the 50 zone, right in that immediate area there. If I was raising kids in there, it would be a concern I have. With regard to the other things that are this, I'm going to support this. I'm looking forward to the recommendation report coming back, seeing if we can get some clarification on a few of the issues raised by council. I do hope that they're going to find a way to integrate this, get some trees on the front. It goes a long way into finding a way to integrate this kind of built form into an area that's beginning to see more semis, more, intensification. But you can do a lot by getting some plantings in front of the side of a house so that you're not looking at a wall of brick or siding. There's a lot you can do to beautify it and integrate it and make it a feature of the area rather than something that sticks out like a sore thumb. So those are just my comments. Looking forward to the recommendation report coming back and proceeding from there. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just to start with, this area under the secondary plan, the Thunder Bay secondary plan, was designated as low-density residential. So we're kind of moving off a low-density residential because I don't think 13 townhouses would fit into the low-density residential. I don't know if I'm correct or not, but I wouldn't think that it would. And so they want to change it to an RM1 zone. But not only change it to an RM1 zone, they want to change it to an RM1 zone, but then they want special provisions. Reduce minimum lot frontage, reduce minimum lot area, encroachment of a covered porch into required side yard setbacks, encroachment of balconies, cantilevers, and terraces into the required rear yard setback, reduce minimum rear yard setback, increase maximum lot coverage, and removal of the planting strip. So we're going from low density to RM1 and all these asks on it. So I think that I think the 5 pounds of sugar or the 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag is a good example of this. I used that before. I am concerned about the density that's going on here and the lack of green space. I think it's because the other development hasn't occurred yet to the east of it. They're going to be right up against it. And we don't know if there's going to be a swale or not. And in the report, and I just want some clarification, in the report it talks about the rear yard being 10, I'm going to find it. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong. At it. Where did it go?
It's on page 6.
Yeah, on 14.3, minimum rear yard, it says 6 meters, but then proposal, it says 10.68 meters. Are they proposing 10.68? Am I reading something wrong?
Maybe you can speak to that. I presume that's the south end of the parcel.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. That is correct. So that would be the setback to the southern lot line. If you're looking at the setback from the rear of the units, that would be the 4.5 meter privacy area.
Oh, okay, then that explains that. But what you have down 6.0 meters is the minimum rear yard, but in one case it's 5.8 meters, so it doesn't really meet it. It should be a no, not a yes.
Yeah, the 6 meter provision there would be for the rear yard of the overall site. Technically, the yards on the side to the east and the west would be interior side yards.
Yes, and I can appreciate that, but in regards to the rear yard setback, it says 6 meters is what's required, and we've heard from the developer, the planner, that on the west side it's only 5.8 meters, so it doesn't really meet the requirement. They're asking for a reduction in the rear yard setback.
Fair point. Yeah, we can speak to that in the future recommendation report.
Now, when will we find out whether there's going to be a swale or not required on that property?
We could speak to that in the recommendation report. If you'd like an answer sooner, I could follow up with development engineering staff and respond separately.
Okay, and I would appreciate that. And one other thing. Okay, I know we had a lot of talk about the tree preservation thing, and the person who presented said that they were not required to do a tree inventory and preservation plan. I think I understood that correctly. He wasn't required. But in your report, the agent owner will be required to submit a tree inventory and preservation plan as a condition of the approval of the plan of subdivision condominium. So which one is right?
Yeah, what we stated in the report is correct. So some of this came out of the changes to Bill 109, where we've, as staff, have decided to not also include a site plan approval process in addition to plan of subdivision, plan of condos. So a tree preservation and a landscape plan and a tree preservation plan were originally, when we pre-consulted, prior to Bill 109, were going to be conditions of the site plan approval. So now we would be applying that at the plan of condominium, plan of subdivision stage.
Oh, okay, and part of that also goes to one of the presenters' concerns was that it not unduly damage. This will not assist with ensuring trees on adjacent parcels are not unduly damaged or removed. So I think that addresses her concerns. We want to make sure that that's done. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Vanderveen, while you're up there, is it practical to provide for landscaping on the sides of these buildings on the Dominion Road facing walls? Is there enough room?
We can explore that further, but the majority of the setback to the northern lot line is about 4.5 meters. That is a pretty considerable distance. However, in the northwest corner of the development, there is some stormwater management infrastructure. So we could follow up with the applicants and see if we can provide some options there.
And yeah, so I noticed that there was some discussion in the report about some type of storage for storm water. So there will have to be some type of drainage program here. When would that plan come forward, the drainage plan?
They did, so typically that would be an actual grading plan would be is kind of the conditions of approval being satisfied. The applicant did submit a stormwater management plan, which shows where the catch basins are going to be, where the stormwater management infrastructure is. So we could circulate that to council if interested.
And does that have any impact on the rear yards of these units?
That will have to confirm with development engineering.
And we have a policy, do we not, the town of Fort Erie, that development cannot detrimentally affect neighboring properties in terms of drainage?
That's correct.
And in terms of the width of the driveway, the private roadway, it may be that the fire department doesn't have a problem because they can run a hose, unless they had to get a truck in for a rescue situation. What about an EMS if any portion of this narrow driveway was blocked? How would an emergency vehicle get in?
We haven't received any comments from Niagara Region stating that that's an issue, but we could certainly follow up with them and get something in writing to confirm that.
I think that would be prudent. Okay, those are the questions that I had, other than my comment, which I'm sure you picked up about the 10 pounds of sugar. Because I think this is another example of that. Councillor Christensen?
Just following up on your worship and through your worship, I'd just like to request that, or point out that a considerable number of reservations have been raised. I think I've made mine clear, and I think the other councillors have. Is it possible to get responses on all these reservations before the recommendation report comes?
We can review on how to do that, but I would assume there would be some type of mechanism to do that, yes. Like a separate memo to council or something.
Yes. Thank you.
So before you go, Mr. Vanderveen, and before we wind this up, I see Councillor Noyes has her hand up, but let me just finish. Is there a need for council to direct that there be a peer review of that functional services report? Or is that something that the developer is going to participate in? Maybe Ms. Dilwaria.
Yes, Your Worship, that would be helpful because staff has been trying to get in touch with the developer to pay the fee for the functional servicing, pay the fee for the peer review, and staff has not been successful to get that fee from the developer. So if council can direct staff, that would be helpful.
Okay, so that would be an amendment to the report. Anyone like to put that on the floor? Councillor Christensen. And the amendment is that the developer finance a peer review of the functional services report. Needs a seconder. Councillor Dubanow. Any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Noyes, over to you.
Yes, just two, I think, little questions, is that there'll be a tree. You have to put a tree in every time you build a house, you have to put a tree up. I would think that, so in other words, we're looking at that they have to plant 13 trees. Yes? Here, there,
That's
somewhere?
my understanding. We'll touch base with our operations and our community planning staff and confirm that.
Okay. The other question is in regards to the private road. It is a private road, so, but I think somewhere in the report I read that there's going to be no parking on that road, right? Now, because it's not a town road, will then, how will we make sure, how will we enforce the no parking? Or can we enforce it?
Might be one for the fire chief if he's here, but yeah, typically no parking signs would be installed, so people are aware it's a fire lane, they're not allowed to park there, they'd have to park on their driveways or in the designated visitor parking spots. But I'll follow up with fire and see what the mechanism is for enforcing that. I would assume it would be like any other place, like Walmart, where you can't park in a fire lane, there would be some type of enforcement action. Just unfortunately, I'm personally not overly familiar with how that all works.
I would appreciate the information. It'd be interesting to know on a private road what we can and can't enforce.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments with respect to this report? I think you can relax now, Mr. Vanderveen.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to vote on this. So we're going to vote on the amended recommendation that we receive this report for information and that the developer be required to finance a functional services report peer review. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, that then takes us to the consent agenda. And we have to remove from the consent agenda item 11.3.2. Are there any other items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? Okay, Councillor Flagg, over to you, the consent agenda, except for item 11.3.2.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council approves the consent agenda with the exception of 11.3.2 as recommended.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. It's actually two comments regarding both the Environmental Advisory Committee minutes as well as the minutes of the Heritage committees. With regard to the Environmental Advisory Committee minutes, I was actually really happy to see that they had some discussion about our changes to the tree bylaw that are being proposed. I was particularly thrilled to see that they mentioned the emphasis on heritage trees and the need to find a way to protect them under the bylaw. This is something that the Heritage Committee is also very concerned about, and I'm hoping perhaps we can have some dialogue between the two committees before that bylaw is finalized for comments, and then maybe we can put our heads together and see how all that fits. And the reason I raise that is it's a particular concern for both committees, for both our environment and our build heritage, because we have heritage trees in town that are also of scientific significance. There's actually a very old, they figure it's about 400 years old, an elm tree in Ward 2, and the reason the reason it's still here, despite the kind of the plague of elm disease we had back in the, I think it was the 70s and 80s, they think that tree is, pardon me? 50s and 60s. 50s and 60s, okay, I wasn't here for that, so I'm just going by what others have told me. The reason they think that tree is still here and that age is because I think it's actually immune to Dutch elm disease. And the University of Guelph is actually studying that tree. And with all the development pressures that we have in the particular area of town where this is, it would be devastating, not only to the municipality, but just to, scientific knowledge, to, and researching, tree diseases and stuff, to lose this tree when it has such an important, place in that research. So I'm really looking forward to this. And I'm hoping we can have a really good discussion about heritage trees and other trees of scientific or other significance to the municipality. Going right into the next part, the Heritage Committee minutes, you'll note there that there is the minutes are now similar to what the Environmental Advisory Committee does with recommendations to council. There's actually something in there regarding the plaque at People's Memorial, which is no longer a functional church. They had their last service. The plaque is actually being donated to the municipality, and the minutes there actually have some conditions on how we are to take it. That's a big deal. Hopefully, there's been some discussion and some comments from Jane Davies, our museum manager, about possibly displaying that plaque in the atrium of Town Hall or another prominent location. These are things that the committee's trying to do, even if we do lose properties or have properties that change hands, to try and preserve some of the items and gain an understanding with owners about artifacts and things that we can do to save just as things change hands and things move along. So those were my comments, Your Worship, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. Under the 11.33, the Crystal Beach Business Improvement, there's two meetings there that are combined, and I mean this in the nicest way. It looks like when I'm going over this, and perhaps I'm reading more into it than there should be, it appears that there's some growing pains. I think there's been a lot of turnover in the Crystal Beach BIA from, let's say, a year ago to now, and I think when I'm reading this, there seems to be a bit of growing pains in it, and one of the questions I have then is the BIA, they talk about buy blanket insurance to cover events and directed liability. Are they not covered because it's a town committee? Are they not covered under the towns?
They are, and there's been a lot of confusion about that. I don't know, Mr. McQueen, can you speak to that?
Thank you, through the mayor. We have had some discussion with Justin Kelly, who's in our procurement area. He's really the person we refer a lot of the insurance questions, and we've encouraged the BIA to contact him well ahead of a lot of the activities that are happening there. And it's more just to ensure that they do have adequate level of coverage, and it's always better for us to have a bit more advanced notice of those activities. But I know that they have had contact since, or it's my understanding they had contact since the minutes were sent out. Often we're not aware of the discussions at those meetings until we receive those minutes as well. But we do have good dialogue with the BIA and can certainly reach out and make sure that if there are any areas where we need to insure, we'll be happy to work with our broker, work with the BIA, and sort those out well ahead of the activities.
Thank you for that explanation. So in other words, they may be covered already and they may not need to buy it, but perhaps they don't have the director liability. I'm not an expert on this by any means. I guess the other comment I had was this is all under administrative and by setting up board meetings up in a proper boardroom format with spectator seating. I'm not sure whether that's considered the norm anyway. Like they're public meetings, aren't they?
The BIA meetings?
BIA meetings?
They are.
Okay, so that's, they just, is it a problem with space then, or is it? Again, I'm reading.
I don't know. Unfortunately, the representative, our representative on that BIA is not present, but other BIA meetings, they're generally open to the membership, and members of the public have always been around when I'm there, unless they've got some reason to go into some type of closed session.
Okay, and I guess I'll just go with my opening statement on this. It appears that there's some growing pains, but they're growing in the right direction. I don't want to But if they need some help, I think that they should be encouraged to reach out to the town resources that may be able to help them with some of these issues.
If you're talking about Crystal Beach BIA, they've had good representation, they've got a very good active counselor, and there's a good relationship with the town. And when I was their representative for a year and a half or so last term, I attended the meetings, made sure that their concerns were addressed. Mr. McQueen, you had your hand up?
Sorry, thank you, through the mayor. Just to respond to the question regarding the meetings, my understanding from the BIA members is that they've traditionally had a very informal format for the meetings. And so members of the public who are showing up don't have a different seating arrangement than the board members who are active in the meeting. And I think they were looking for a more formal setting just to differentiate what's being dealt with as rules and procedures associated with BIA business and the spectator observer space for members of the public who are attending their meetings. And so my understanding is they're looking for a more formal sort of meeting space to differentiate that.
Okay. Thank you very much, that's all.
Any other members of council? Madam Clerk, I wonder, with respect to the communication that we received from the 56th Field Artillery Regiment, whether we can at least acknowledge that we received this. We thank them for bringing to our attention their commemoration of Gunner Kenneth Jansen, who was a local casualty of the Second World War, and we wish them success in their venture to Italy this year. Can we do that? Because we're going to be receiving this. And then the other question that I had is, it comes out of the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes when there was a reference to let's see here. I think it's on page 4 of those minutes. Yes, this was an item about more portable classrooms, 3 more at GFAS. There's no reference here to, yes, there's also a reference to more portables at John Brandt. These aren't accessible units. And so I'm wondering whether there's any requirement that they be accessible. Is that something that we can look into? How about if I... Yeah, perfect.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Other people wouldn't stick around after they were finished.
Well, you said you had questions, you said you had questions on my report.
Now
so
I understand why Councillor Noyes is sitting way over there. It's not because we don't want her any closer, it's because she has a function.
So when Keegan Jennings presented to the Accessibility Committee both of those site plans, the first one at John Brandt, we asked that question, do they need to be? And he said they did not, and if there were any children that had any form of disability that would be in those classrooms, they would bring them inside the school and make those changes. At GFES, the portables they have now are accessible. They have accessible washrooms, accessible ramp. So same thing there. Those ones do not require to be accessible, but they would move to the accessible units if they had to. So we did ask that question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. And
Yep.
Mr. McQueen, that just highlights the fact that these portables are going in, highlights the fact that we need to meet at some point with DSBN, because all of these schools are overcrowded, and with the growth in the community, we're gonna need something further. So can I leave that in your capable hands? I know you're leaving the country, but so you should. You're gonna have to wash out your mouth with soap. I'm sorry, Councillor Dubanow. Councillor Noyes.
I just wanted to comment on it because I have some experience with the accessible the portable things, because when I was a therapist in the schools, that was a rule then too, is that they did not have to be accessible. Some were made accessible, but one of the rationale also was that in inclement weather, particularly when Mr. McQueen goes on vacation, that they did not want the children who had accessibility needs to have to go through for recess and things like that through the weather, so they would prefer them within the main structure of the school. So that was also one of the reasons that most the children who had accessibility issues were usually kept within the school proper, so to speak.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we've got a variety of reports that are in the consent agenda. That includes the corporate strategic plan, the building, the first quarter report. So I have a question with respect to the corporate strategic plan, and that is on, and maybe Ms. Bradnam, since you're here, you could speak to this. Priority 2 talks about, in particular, I've got priority 2, let's see. On the diversity, equity, and inclusion portion, talking about 2.2 under strategies to action, encouraging diversity in public office and participation on boards and committees to be more reflective of the community. Is there something that we already have in place, or is there something that will be developed out of this as part of our strategy going forward to see how we can encourage greater diversity on our boards and committees and on council?
So part of the region's funding through FCM was the Seat at the Table program, which had reached out to women in very diverse ethnicities and bringing them to the table with some mentoring counselors that are already in place and looking to see how we can grow that diversity in public office. So we would develop something here, but we would probably access a lot of the strategies they used. And also, not to discourage somebody if they did run and weren't successful, we all have boards and committee positions as well. And we would probably encourage them to go that route, to kind of grow their leadership skills through that boards and committees route to get to public office eventually.
Right. Are you familiar with the recent concerns expressed by some of the female regional councillors with respect to some of the bad behavior of some people in St. Catharines in particular?
Yes.
Although there could be imports, I wouldn't want to blame all of that bad behavior on residents of St. Catharines, but that's a particular challenge, I think, in terms of how we make safe places for not just women, but diverse members of a council or of a board or committee. Is that something that will be looked at as well?
I think from, to your worship, through that FCM program and through the region, I think they had a lot of good networking tools they were putting in place to help support women that want to run for public office, and I think that would be something that we could access. There was also a lot of good books and toolkits that we could also access through that group, and working with Cassie Aganea from the region. She's very open, and I'm part of the regional DEI group as well, sharing that information.
Okay.
They were very excited when I shared with them last week at our meeting that council has that as a strategic pillar. They thought that was amazing. So after tonight, I'm going to send them your plan just to show them how that's going to flow.
Thank you. And then the final item I had on page 8 of the report, but it's strategy priority 6, and it's 6.2. This is one where we're going to advocate for innovative funding models from other levels of government that will support and promote community-based solutions to address homelessness, social housing, independent living, supportive housing options. Should we not include affordable housing?
I think the affordable housing piece is under 6.3, that policy framework, and that has got the incentivizes in there as well. I mean, we can add that if you'd like.
Yeah, advocating for funding, I mean, I think that's, so I think we need to amend that. Anybody interested in amending to include that? Councillor Dubanow?
Doesn't
It's not on
social,
the floor yet. Is there a seconder? Councillor Christensen, it's on the floor.
just, isn't social housing inclusive of affordable?
I don't know, is it? I think it's a portion of affordable housing, but I think it's not necessarily social housing.
No, but I think it's in that, the definition of social housing.
I think we'd be,
We're at it again.
I think we'd been better off if we had that as a defined item.
So
Any further
independent-
questions or comments on that? All those in favor of that amendment? Thank you. So that's in 6.2. Sorry to mess up
That's
that
okay.
beautiful graphic. It's still beautiful, yes. And thank you for all your hard work on that, along with the CAA. I did, oh, you know what? I thought that the planner was in the meeting that we had with staff. I thought somebody from the planning department was in that meeting at the fire hall in Ridgeway. I thought Alex was there. So that was missing in the report.
Oh, that Alex was there?
Yeah.
I called him the executive advisor.
Okay. Because he was no longer the director at that point. No. So anyway, just to make sure that he's given due credit, because he was there and he was providing some excellent insights. Okay, if there are no other questions with respect to the consent agenda items less 11.3.2, all those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. So Councillor Christensen, I'm going to ask you to take over the chair to ask Councillor Flagg to put 11.3.2 on the floor.
Councillor Flagg, I'm asking you to take item 11.3.2, minutes of the Community Gaming Development Corporation on the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I will move 11.3.2 to receive the Community Gaming Development Corporation minutes. And it's seconded by Councillor McDermott.
Are there any questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Christensen. No problem, right? That's okay. Had to read it. That takes us then to new business and inquiries. And Councillor Christensen, you have the first resolution there with respect to the library board. It's item 13.1.
Yes. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council accept the resignation of Jerry McCutcheon from the Fort Erie Public Library Board, and that further Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment. I've had the great fortune of working with Jerry, both as his time as a member of the library board as well as chair of the library board. You know, we all come to time to move on, do different things, but I just wanted to thank him for his service to the community and to the library, to education and his dedication through town. Anyone who knows Jerry knows he has a remarkable story, and he's certainly someone who I look to. So I just wanted to thank him and share with town just how thankful we are for his service. service. So
Yeah.
thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Well said. If there are no other further questions or comments, all those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor McDermott, you have the next resolution.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Flagg. The council accepts the resignation of Councillor Nick Dubanow from the Fort Erie Public Library Board, and further that council direct staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Any questions or comments? And thank you, Councillor Dubanow, for your service on this to date. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us then to Councillor Noyes. You have the next resolution. We need the name of a councillor to replace Councillor Dubanow. Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, if council is agreeable, I'd actually like to nominate Councillor Christensen to be council rep on the Fort Erie Library Board, or Public Library Board, if she accepts the nomination.
Would you accept?
Yes, Your Worship.
Then Councillor Noyes, you would fill in Councillor Christensen's name.
Yes, yes, Mayor Redekop, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that the council appoints Councillor Christensen to the Fort Erie Library Board for the term ending November 14th, 2026.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. And I notice you voted for yourself.
I learned many, many years ago that if you don't vote for yourself, you risk having no votes at all.
Good response.
That's a good lesson. Next resolution is Councillor Dubanow, and that's with respect to the memo regarding the tree bylaw, tree preservation bylaw.
Yes, Your Worship, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Flagg, that council receives memorandum regarding update on bylaw 6004, regulate destruction, injury, or harvesting of trees for information purposes.
Are there any questions or comments? I want to say that that was a very good memorandum and appreciate receiving that and look forward to further information on this. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, just touching on what I mentioned earlier about the comments from the Environmental Advisory Committee and some of the discussions we've had informally within the various heritage committees, just to touch on the issue of heritage trees, ecologically significant trees, trees of scientific significance. These are just things that committee members are looking for, so I'm hoping as we go through the bylaw update, we can have some discussion and perhaps include some provisions for them as well, Your Worship.
Thank you. All those in favor of the resolution to receive the memo? Opposed? None opposed. That is carried. That then takes us to the resolution to go into closed session. Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. The council does now go into closed session at 8:12 p.m. to consider item 14.1, Property Standards Committee appointment.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried, so we'll go into closed session for the moment. So we're back in the chamber, and Councillor McDermott, you have the resolution arising out of closed session.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Flagg, that council does now rise to reconvene from closed session at 8:31, having deferred this matter to August 14th council and committee, and staff is to proceed as directed.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. That then takes us to motions and, well, I guess before I get there, are there any other inquiries or items of new business? Should have done that before we went into closed session, but I'm sure the clerk will be able to massage the minutes. Okay, that takes us to motions, and Councillor Noyes, you have a motion regarding residential fence height.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow. Whereas the Town of Erie fence bylaw regulates fence heights along Lake Erie, but does not regulate fence heights along other bodies of water such as creeks, and whereas residents have expressed concerns about the height of fences along bodies of water other than Lake Erie, and now therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to review the fence bylaw regarding fence heights along bodies of water other than Lake Erie and submit a recommendation report at future council meetings.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to that, Councillor Noyes?
Yes, just briefly, and I'm hoping this doesn't get to be a great big thing. It really is, particularly in my ward along Black Creek. They're used to being able to see, up and down the creek and see what's going on. And some people who have moved new to the area and stuff, there's been 2 occasions where they've put up the 5.8 or whatever it is, foot fence, and, pretty much right to the water's edge. And it has caused some concerns among the neighbors and things, because they do pay for the river view and, or for the creek view and stuff like that. So that if we could look at that, again, this is not considered a spite fence or anything else like that. We're not going there. We're just saying to recognize that, from to the water's edge or whatever, maybe a 3-foot instead of a 10-foot, or not 10-foot, but it's 5.8 inch, I think that we might want to look at this to prevent, to see what's appropriate in this type of setting.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I don't know, Ms. Dewari, if you would know, but does our fence bylaw have any provision with respect to how close you can locate your fence to the body of water? In this case, Lake Erie?
We have a provision about the height of the fence, and it also mentions it's just about the height, which is 1 meter above the ground level, and limits it to 1.25 meters above. So it starts from 1 meters to 1.25 meters, but it doesn't limit the distance, how close you can go to the edge of the water.
Up to or in the water, it could theoretically go. And that could apply to a creek as well. Does that cause you any concern?
I think that's one of the reasons that staff has kind of encouraged me not to kind of put something specific before until they can kind of look at what the options should perhaps be. And again, just a little bit of background, Niagara Peninsula Conservation, there was a concern that was raised, and the concern was raised, let's say 2 years ago, and the MPC did prevent the high fence from going in because it was in a floodplain, and again, just a few lots down, no longer in the floodplain for whatever the floodplain area is, had no objections. And the way our bylaw currently states is that if the MPC doesn't have a concern, then the fence can be a regular fence height. And that was kind of where the concern was raised, that it had to do something with the floodplain.
So I'm wondering if you would consider adding to your motion that after height along bodies of water other than Lake Erie, something that states to the effect, and proximity to the water's edge on any body of water.
I guess I would That's fine for me. I think my seconder would also approve.
Friendly
Yes.
amendment? Okay, so, Madam Clerk, if you didn't get that, yeah, so after the word Lake Erie in the operative paragraph, which is in the second line, add the words "and proximity to the water's edge of any body of water," which would then give staff the ability to provide us with advice on whether we should go there, and if so, how distant from the edge of the water a fence should be. Okay, any further questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion as revised? That is carried. Councillor Christensen, over to you.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas global technology platforms such as Airbnb or Vrbo were created to improve global access to rental opportunities, particularly those available for vacation or shorter-term business purposes, and whereas the impact of these disruptive technologies on rental markets has raised the following concerns in the past decade: concentration of ownership and proliferation of landlord corporations with minimal interest in or accountability to local communities, removal of housing stock from long-term rental markets with resulting increases in rents, lack of control over occupancy, e.g. families versus large groups of partygoers, incidents of nuisance infractions, noise, garbage, parking, and whereas any reduction in the availability of long-term housing stock runs counter to the province of Ontario's goal of 1.5 million additional homes in the next 10 years, and whereas growth in short-term rental markets may also have a negative impact on housing affordability for seasonal workers who service tourist destinations or farming communities, and where implementing local/municipal restrictions through municipal law enforcement tools, licensing, and municipal planning tools, zoning bylaw restrictions, may push demand to other communities, and where some platforms, e.g. Airbnb, are already working toward providing notice to owners about municipal regulations and licensing through a license number field, and whereas some jurisdictions, e.g. Quebec, Scotland, have acknowledged the limitations of local authorities/municipalities in controlling the impact of global technologies and have developed comprehensive regulatory frameworks, and whereas a comprehensive, consistent regulatory approach is likely to prove more effective in Ontario, now therefore be it resolved that Council requests the Government of Ontario to establish a regulatory framework requiring digital platforms such as Airbnb and Vrbo to, one, require owners using the digital platforms to comply with municipal planning and licensing regulations, and two, prevent advertising of properties that are not registered with the relevant municipality, and three, provide a contact with the platform to ensure ongoing and effective communications for provincial and municipal officials, and further, that the province of Ontario work with municipalities to address situations in which long-term housing stock has been lost to corporate ownership of short-term rental properties, and further, that a copy of the resolution be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Doug Ford, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honourable Steve Clark, local MPPs, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and all municipalities in Ontario.
Did you wish to speak to that?
Yes, during our discussions with respect to the problems that various communities within Fort Erie have had with short-term rentals, the fact that the municipality has attempted through both licensing and planning restrictions to control short-term rentals, and the fact that in other jurisdictions, none of those have necessarily worked, but that two major jurisdictions at least have looked at a broader view, trying to gain traction with the digital disruptive technologies themselves. I thought that perhaps having the province of Ontario take a look at this, rather than having 440 or up to 440 different takes on the issue. And we already have, as our consultant's report showed, completely disparate approaches in the municipalities that have tackled issues with short-term rentals. So I thought, well, we can ask.
Quite right. Anyone else? All those in favor of the resolution? You're in favor, right?
She doesn't vote for herself.
Yeah, you told me you vote for yourself. I thought you'd have both hands up on this one. Well done. Thank you very much. That is carried. Okay, so Councillor Lewis has withdrawn his motion, and that's primarily because the report that we approved with respect to zoning defines locations and in an R2 zoning, which is not a zoning for any of the new subdivisions, so it's somewhat redundant in that regard, hence his withdrawal. Are there any notices of motion this evening? There being none, that takes us to consideration of bylaws. We already have bylaws 114 and 122 that are coming out of the package. Any other bylaws that anyone wishes removed? If not, then Councillor Flagg, could you proceed with first and second reading of the bylaw package less 114 and 122?
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor McDermott, that the bylaw package containing 111-2023 to authorize the execution of a second amending subdivision agreement with 2835033 Ontario Inc., Mitchell Williams, Allison Woods Subdivision Phase 1, 112-2023 to adopt a municipal parking lot use maintenance policy. 113-2023 to authorize the entry into an encroachment agreement with Morgan Bonke Bridgeburg Books, owner 16 Jarvis Street. 115-2023 to authorize the renewal of a license agreement with Niagara Parks Commission Riverwalk. 116-2023 to amend zoning bylaw 12990 as amended to 72 Ridge Road South, Wendy McGagan and Patrick McGagan owners. 117-2023 to amend zoning bylaw 12990 as amended 0-1215 Lavinia Street, Vincenzo Pingu, owner. 118-2023 to amend zoning bylaw 12990 as amended 1169 Pettit Road, Crystal Ridge Homes, owner. 119-2023 to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw 150-06 for the town of Fort Erie planning area, amendment number 741169 Pettit Road, Crystal Ridge Homes, owner. 120-2023 to reappoint Jordan Hamilton, now Jordan Clark, as building inspector for the corporation of the town of Fort Erie, and repeal bylaw 82-2021. 121-2023 to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw 150-06 for the town of Fort Erie planning area, amendment 7.3 town-wide, town of Fort Erie applicant. 123-2023 to appoint Sheila Fredo as municipal law enforcement officer and repeal bylaw 109-2023 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. That bylaw package as amended is on the floor for any questions or comments. I had one question with respect to bylaw 113, and that is the bylaw to authorize entry into an encroachment agreement. The second paragraph speaks of the town waiving the fees with respect to the road allowance encroachment. But my recollection was that was dependent upon the awning being repaired. Mr. McQueen, do you have any recollection on that?
Through the mayor to you, that was my recollection as well. So I think maybe just as a matter of operations, we can ensure that that is the case.
Or we could amend paragraph 2 to make sure that it's clear that that was a condition. Councillor Dubanow will move that. Seconder? Councillor Christensen? Any questions or comments on that amendment to bylaw 113, paragraph 2? All those in favor? That's carried. If there are no other questions with respect to the bylaw package as amended, Councillor Dubanow, you have third and final reading.
I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Flagg, that bylaws 111, 2023, 112, 2023, 113, 2023, 115, 2023, 116, 2023, 117, 2023, 118, 2023, 119, 2023, 120, 2023, 121, 2023, and 123, 2023 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Flagg, back to you for bylaws 114 and 122.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that bylaws 114, 2023 to require pre-consultation for certain planning applications to the Town of Fort Erie planning area and to repeal bylaw 63-09, and 122, 2023 to amend fees and charges bylaw 40-09 as amended, and in brackets pre-consultation fees is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Councillor Noyes. Can't vote on this. We didn't see a thing. That is carried. That bylaw, those two bylaws are on the floor for any questions or comments. If there are none, Councillor Dubanow, over to you.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Flagg that bylaws 114, 2023 and 122, 2023 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Okay. That then takes us to scheduling of meetings. Or no, sorry. We have a confirmatory bylaw.
You get so used to the routine.
Councillor Christensen, you have first and second reading for the confirmatory bylaw. All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor McDermott, third and final reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Flagg, that bylaw 124-2023 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Now we're at scheduling of meetings. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor. Redekop, I have a meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock at Mr. Turner's house on the regarding River Trail Estates Phase 2. It's going to be a site visit on the Accessibility Committee meeting on tomorrow too at 4 o'clock in Committee Room 1, and on the 26th at 3 p.m. the Infrastructure Business Subcommittee.
Any other meetings anyone wishes to announce? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'm going to verify this, but I see it in my calendar. The composite of the heritage committees, which are the three individual committees, is going to be meeting at Town Hall on Wednesday, August 9th at 1 p.m.
That's correct.
It is correct? Okay, yeah. And so we'll be here 1 p.m. I don't think we have a boardroom assigned yet, but it'll likely...
Wait a second. No. I've got, no. The 9th is a... Wait a second. The 9th is a Wednesday, and that is, I was looking at a regional committee meeting. Sorry.
Lucky you.
Good times, just keep rolling.
Yeah, that's our typical day, and I'm still getting into the routine of receiving the notices. So I see it on my calendar, and that's before our next council and committee meeting. So I'm announcing it. I'm sure if there's something wrong with what I announce, someone will remind me very quickly to ensure I go to the right meeting at the right time. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other meetings? Councillor Christensen.
On August the 2nd, 5:30.
If there are no others, tomorrow afternoon at 2:15 is a Diversity and Inclusion Coalition meeting here at Town Hall, Committee Room 1, and at 5 o'clock there is a Community Healthcare Services Committee meeting to talk about Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. That's in the lunchroom. That's at 5 o'clock here. If there are no other meetings, then Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, Your Worship. Best part of the evening. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes that council adjourns at 8:51 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on August 28th, 2023.
Those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all.